All right, everybody. We are back for the game development live stream. It's actually been a little bit, but we recently restarted. We had Justin from ePlay on last week talking about cash gaming. It's a category that you could build a game in right now and actually start making money as one solo developer, which is why I love it. It's a different business model. It's not populated by multi-billion dollar game publisher incumbents. There's a few platforms out there that can help you do it. I'm now working for one of them, which is Skills, but we're here now to zoom out that camera lens a lot. We're going to talk about innovation in the frontiers of gaming. I am really delighted here because I've got Chris Heatherly. I've known Chris, I think I've known you for over a decade at this point, Chris. We've been working with each other on a variety of things. Chris is a legend in game development, game publishing. Well before I knew him, he was involved in Club Penguin. Probably half the audience doesn't know what Club Penguin is. You weren't alive when Club Penguin was out. But we both go back that far. Chris ran gaming for Disney and then NBC Universal. So he has got an incredible viewpoint from the very top of this industry, from working at big publishers, building big games, funding game development, funding studios, all the way through to startup landscape and taking his hand at that. Chris, why don't you just, maybe I gave you a little bit of an intro. What do you want to say about like your background relative to like what's happening?
You're too kind. First of all, you're too kind, but thank you. You're the legend. You're the legend. You. No, I mean, I think you covered it really well. I mean, I've been in games, media, and entertainment for 25-ish years now. I started off in Web 1, actually, not in the gaming industry, but I've been in Web 1, Web 2, mobile, and Web 3. So I've seen a lot of different, a lot of the progression of I've been on the whole internet ride as you have. I think we're in the most interesting chapter yet, the most bananas chapter yet with AI and some of the stuff that's going on now. But I was at Disney for 14 years. Half of that I ran their toy business. Half of that I ran various aspects of their gaming business, Club Penguin, mobile gaming, had several top grossing games there, some of which are still live. Started a games business at Universal, and got to work with a lot of the talent over there. After that, I've been in startup land basically. So I went into startup land during COVID, which was a fun time to do that. And I don't know how many startups I've worked with now, but it's a lot. So including my own in Web3. So I have a lot of. I've always been in new technology. I've always been a believer in kind of skating to where the puck is going, which, like you know, sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you're early. A lot of times you're too early. But I've learned a lot along the way.
We're going to come back to Web3, but I don't want to make it the lead here. But it's worth kind of at least a footnote in this conversation. I want to take the camera lens way out. I know we've both read that Matt Ball report with all his slides. He's got like 166 slides in there. If you're in the game industry, you haven't looked at that yet, you should just like, I don't know. I want to tell you to stop watching us and go do that and then come back, but don't do that. Keep watching. You're live, like be a participant here. But after this, go look at it and take a look. And Drew, maybe you could even locate that online, Matt Ball's 2026 industry report. It's just got a lot of really interesting data in it. Here's sort of one of the things that he points to. So first of all, the game industry is growing if you look at certain numbers. I don't know if it's growing if we look at real dollars.
It's not. It's not. I think that's one of the and Matt does fantastic work. This is one of his, I think, most consequential reports of those. But I in some ways, I think the report is a little more doomer than it should be. And in some ways, but in some really big ways, it's almost too optimistic. And one of those is that he doesn't correct for inflation. If you do, then the industry is clearly in decline. over the
Right.
last 5
Yeah.
years.
Back in the days of 2% inflation, you can kind of gloss over these nominal dollars versus real dollar kind of things. So it's nominal dollars. So we'll give him a break. He's a smart guy. He probably
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
it didn't make it super confusing. But he brought up another issue where, like, who is absorbing the growth? One of the things that I thought was really interesting in this report was just the observation that if you subtract basically Roblox from the market looks way worse than it would otherwise. So I wanted to talk about that. Like, what is your take, Chris, on Roblox specifically, to the extent we want to do a drill down into Roblox, but like what does it mean to have a platform like Roblox absorbing so much of that growth? And what does it mean for like culture trends and demographics? Where are the players moving today? What do they want to do? What are your thoughts on that?
That's it. We could take 7 hours on that.
We'll
I
take half.
think it. I think that Roblox, people underestimate what Roblox is, and I've been saying that for probably about 4 years. The One of the big problems with gaming that I think we're running into with the AI thing is that game engines are have been architected primarily as client to build client-based apps, right? And then you integrated services like Beamable, to give it, cloud services. But fundamentally, they're meant to be downloaded and installed locally. And the rest of the internet has gone to this cloud model, right? Where you just go to a website or you have very thin apps and everything is streamed to you. And, if you look at what that's enabled on the video side of the business, right? Video is 2/3 of the internet. It is the primary form of what people consume on every social network, right? And games just cannot penetrate at that level because they can't be they aren't streamed, right? So what Roblox did is built a architecture for, it's not entirely server based, it's not streaming of frames of it's not video streaming, it's not what Netflix is doing, but it's a form of thin client, cloud downloadable gaming. And once you understand technically what that is, it's superior to the App Store, right? Where I could push an app on Roblox and it could be downloaded by you, the user, and you never have to upgrade your Roblox app. And that means I can push code much faster, I can iterate much faster. Plus, the fact that that what you have to learn to make an app is Lua and not C in the case of Unreal. The barrier to entry for creation went down, and then what Roblox did is it started to become a social network for gaming. And I think it's one of two social networks for gaming, Steam being the other one. But now it's got real social effects like a TikTok or a Instagram or X. And that doesn't exist in a lot of other places in gaming. It doesn't exist in the App Store. It doesn't exist in console in the same way. And so social is fueling discovery, right? And then Apple comes along and slams down this IDFA deprecation, which makes it really hard to acquire users, very expensive. It biases the entire industry towards existing apps that already have large audiences. It makes it very hard for anyone to acquire anything new. And the App Store is useless, right? Becomes just useless. And so in that world, if you're going to get discovery for new apps, it's just a superior method, right? Because I can make a game cheaper. I can deploy it cheaper. I can make it cheaper and faster. I could deploy it cheaper. There's no friction. I'm deploying it into an app where 100% of people playing that in that app are gamers with a profile, with an avatar, with a wallet, with a credit card attached. It fundamentally changes. Like there's this term that I like to use called the Glengarry leads, which most of your audience won't get, but it refers to like high quality sales leads. And And Roblox are the Glengarry leads. Roblox and Steam are the Glengarry leads of Steam, because when you go and buy users on, say, Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you're putting out an ad to a lot of people who are not gamers, hoping that you're going to find some gamers and convert them. But when you're marketing in Roblox or you're marketing in Steam, you're marketing to gamers. So you've already passed that first big cut in the inefficiency in your marketing, right? So it's just a fundamentally different model. And then I recently talked to Dave Brancusi, actually, who's I've known for a long time, and he's announced some things with he just announced an AI MCP, which basically lets you bring your own model, your own, Gemini or Grok or whatever you want to use, Claude.
Okay, we got to do a quick sidebar on what an MCP even is. So, model context protocol. I've been building agents and little sort of demoware in my open source projects that you can find on. You can go to meditations.metavert.io. You'll find my articles about it, or just go to my GitHub. I publish everything, even including stuff I don't even talk about. But so, Chris, you introduced it. So what do you think the relevance of MCP is? What does it mean for something like
what Dave has realized that he gets AI, right? And I think a lot of people in the games industry are still fighting it. And he's going to lean all the way into it. So now you've got this superior distribution ecosystem, right? That's distributing games like social media to a game playing audience, and where it becomes a lot easier to develop and create content because you're using AI. And I think that the centrifugal forces of all this are it's just a better platform altogether than the App Store and console. And so what you see is the app stores and the consoles are kind of waning, right? And younger audiences are growing up on Roblox, and they're staying with Roblox because they're already invested there. Their friends are there. Their social networks are there. They already have accounts. They have seniority there. All the things that work for, let's say an MMO long term or a social network long term, are working for them. And so I actually did some analysis recently where I looked at what Roblox is doing with revenue in the games industry, and it's actually very aggressively consolidating revenue, especially in the top 10 games and the top 20 games. And even as you go down to the top 100 games, it's engrossing, it's stealing dollar share from those. And I think that's happening for time too. I just don't have visibility at time. And so with the tools I have. And so I think that it is, I've been saying it for a while, but Roblox is the new console. People keep saying, oh, when is the new console going to come around to save us? Roblox is the new console. It's a superior console. So then you look at, okay, well, what's going on with Unreal, with Unity and Unreal? Unity, Unreal, Fortnite, still has a very large player base, but just has not broken out with UEFN yet. But they've changed the rev shares. You can now monetize your islands. There's some things moving in their favor, but still too hard to develop for UEFN. And they haven't. It's kind of the same players. They haven't really broken out from that Fortnite crowd yet in the way that Roblox has been able to expand its audience. But I think that there is potential for Fortnite and UEFN. But I also think that, as much as I respect Tim Sweeney, he's stubborn and in his own way a lot of the time, and maybe not aggressive enough in understanding what Roblox is. And then you look at Unity, and Unity, just can't kind of find its ass with both hands. And when this world model thing came out from Google, it shocked the market, right, into thinking that game engines are dead, which is not true. But I think if you look at Unity, they've kind of they're the extreme version of what I'm talking about here, which is they're still primarily client based. You have to for the most part, bring your own cloud, right? They're not cloud native development like Roblox. And their data structure, and there's a bunch of architectural issues that I think with both with Unreal and Unity that will make these large language models will make it hard for them to fully utilize them, because the data model that they have is so big that it's hard to keep in the context window, right? Which is basically memory, right? And there's a bunch of other things, spatial reasoning. There's other things that need to get worked out. And so I think that if I had to take a bet, and I literally am as an investor, I think that I'm very long on Roblox, because I think that Dave is an engineer and understands architecturally where games are headed. And I think that games have just ignored technology for the last decade to their detriment. And if we're going to see vitality come back to the games industry, it's going to have to embrace new technology, like this kind of cloud-based social type thing, like AI. But there's a lot of recalcitrance in the games industry to new technology, especially when it is a threat to people's jobs. And so, and the thing is that developers on Roblox don't give a shit about any of that, right? They'll use AI because they're just kids, and they're, like the base. Yes, there are pro developers, but a lot of it is just kids who are trying things out, and that sets a culture and a tone for what is permissible, right? And I don't think you're going to see the same kind of anti-AI fervor that you see in Steam, for example. And so these Roblox developers are just going to be moving at a speed that other gaming platforms are not, and I think that's going to be dramatic.
Unity is a good example of how, once the business model is created around advertising, it really controls your destiny to a large extent. And in the case of Unity in particular, like, I think they've missed so many opportunities there to branch out into other areas that could be meaningful for them. In particular, there's no reason, if you turn back the clock many years, Unity could be the social layer that interconnects this incredible number of games being created with Unity, because it has one big advantage in Unity that Roblox doesn't have, which is Roblox is still like top-down kind of walled garden. I mean, it's the biggest of all the walled gardens at this point as far as games are concerned. At least what you can say about Unity is it helps you create software that ideally you now control your own destiny with, which is why the whole that business model that they've now abandoned, that pivoted towards rev share and stuff, was such a toxic thing for them, not only because of developer backlash, but it was sort of like the first step towards, essentially, even though they didn't express it this way, and I don't even think people think of it this way, that's the first step towards a walled garden architecture, where it's like, okay, we're going to bring everyone in, we're going to take a share of revenue, and we're going to build up around that. Which is interesting, because that's a different model than the advertising network model that generated them a lot of revenue. But if I kind of strip it out to like the engineering view into Unity, they've got a pretty great 3D engine that's pretty easy to use, where you could make desktop software, you could make even web software with some of the web GPU stuff that's on the way and becoming standardized. You can certainly make downloadable Steam games, and you control your own destiny with that. It's just a lot harder. I always wondered, like, because actually I know for a fact that they tried a couple of times to create a social layer, and I think they spent 10 or 20 million dollars trying to sort this out and create like social friend systems and things between Unity games. I don't know why they dropped the ball on that, but like, that's the single thing they should have gotten right 5 or 10 years ago. And they'd probably be an interesting alternative to something like a Roblox.
I mean, I've said this for a while, that the biggest hole in their strategy is that they don't have a Roblox type front end, right? But look, I think that one of the big problems in the games industry is that it got taken over by these sooty business people and a lot of boomers, and I have much respect for John Riccatello, but I'll pick on him a little bit. In that, like, a lot of the decision making that he made with Unity was about, going public and trying to, it became very focused on the street, as you do, right? But
Mhm.
if you look at Silicon Valley, and I'm not saying they never do anything for the street, of course they do, but they're much more tech led, right? And a lot of the, you think a lot of the big names that we talk about in tech, they're, even someone like a Sam Altman, who, maybe is not like like an engineer day to day, but they're all very technical, right? And game CEOs, Strauss, JR, Andrew Wilson, a lot of these guys are just not very technical, and they and they come from a AAA background where most of them come from EA. There's a lot of like EA nepotism in the games industry, and there's a strong AAA bias there, right? And part of it is that I've realized over the years is that those people, they like a business where all the things that investors complain about in games, they like, right? So like huge teams spend a lot of money, years and years of development, yada yada yada. Those are all things that like investors look at and they're like, gosh, why can't it be faster in a market and smaller teams and cheaper? Well, the part of the reason is, there are legitimate reasons for it, but also that's the moat that the AAA guys think they have, right? And every AAA developer I know has a mentality of like, how do I get a bigger and bigger budget and then run the project to a point where we're so pregnant that they have to give me even more money. And so like it's very much kind of like the blockbuster filmmaker mentality that like I just want more and more money because money wins, and that's my moat. And they're getting beat by kids making stuff based on AI characters that is nonsense in their basement, like steal the brain rot. And it's an industry that has lived in denial of where technology is headed for a long time, and I think it's catching up.
Well, hey, and some of the people who are really talented game developers have moved over to AI, these other categories, not the least of which Demis Hassabis, the leader of DeepMind, was game developer. He was originally chess prodigy. Then he worked for Lionhood. He made a really cool game that I played back in the day called Black and White, or Black and White, and was the AI programmer for them. Now he's got the Nobel Prize for AlphaFold, which is just
incredible. So look, if you're an
That's
AI guy like that, right? There's almost no reason to be in the games industry now, because you could be paid a gazillion dollars if you have that skill set some of these guys are making millions of dollars, right? In salary, not just in stock. In working for big tech or one of the big model makers, but also like games has a culture, a Luddite culture of we don't want to try new things. Like if you ever try anything new in gaming, if you try something new in Silicon Valley, I'm going to make everyone wear lobsters on their head or something, some crazy idea. Gary Tan will put a lobster on his head.
Physicalized.
Right. Gary Tan will put a lobster on his head. There will be a million think pieces where people are like, are lobsters on your head the future of headwear? Like there's a whole ecosystem there to support new ideas and new like disruption. In the games industry, if you do that, you will be called Hitler, and like you're the worst person in the world because you want people to wear lobsters on their heads. How dare you? We don't wear lobsters on our heads. And it's partially the gamer base, but I would argue that gamers have been trained by game developers to be anti new technology because of this bias, right? And it's a bias, by the way, that only exists in the in the West and really in the United States. Doesn't exist in China, doesn't exist in Southeast Asia. So like there's all these other parts of the world where you can use new technology and no one's going to shit on you. But in the United States, if you try to use AI or you try to do web gaming, I mean, this is my thing about another podcast that is one of my favorites, but that I frequently spar with, is that anyone that tries anything new, they jump on,
There's
and
definitely an immune system in the game industry that
huge
rejects
immune system.
new ideas and tries to align you with the traditional ways of doing things. I experienced that myself, by the way, when I started a mobile game studio, as you know, Chris, because we worked together there. But started a studio called Disruptor Beam, and we built some mobile games, some of which did really well, including a Star Trek game that's in its 10th year. So I feel like I know a few things about how to make long running live services games. But when I started that journey, a lot of people in the industry told me things like, well, if you want to make games, why would you do mobile? Those aren't real game, quote unquote, real games. And I even found that when I was recruiting people for the studio, if I interviewed people that had been long in the game industry, sometimes it was crazy. They'd even ask questions like, yeah, I'll come here. I'll work on mobile games. Like, is that like the stepping stone towards you guys making real games? Like, how are real games going to play into this? Or can we make games with a different business model that are premium games that play like a traditional game just on your breath? Like, there were definitely people that came up through the game industry and wanted that, which I think that happened sort of at an exponential level inside AAA studios, which is why it took so long for any AAA studio to even come up with a mobile version. Now, eventually we had versions of Call of Duty, and Blizzard has had some success with some of its games in mobile.
Yeah, yeah. Overwatch has a mobile title finally coming, right? What year is it? 2026.
Yeah.
No, it's there. There's a real and I detected this so hard at Dice, where it's like I went to Dice on the last day, and like everyone was kind of tired for the week or whatever, and I just shown up, so I was kind of like chipper or whatever. Like, hey guys, what's going on? And like the attitude was so defeatist and shitty, and and I was like, oh man, I've been vibe coding and building this stuff, and I'm building stuff at home that like on my own that I never thought I would be able to do. Beyond my wildest dreams, like this is like alchemy or magic or something. And like, and like people were just like, they just wanted to sulk, and I think it's that, if you look outside the United States, like your point about mobile, in China, mobile is the platform, right? It's mobile and PC, I don't think anyone in China feels like they're second rate or not doing something that's like prime time if they're working on a mobile game. I think they probably feel like they're working on like the vanguard of culture. And so a lot of these things, we've gotten into a lot of like just really bad narratives, I think, in the games industry in North America. And if you look at the job loss, and Matthew gets into this, right? It's primarily in the United States. It's primarily in California. Now, a lot of that has to do, there's a million reasons for it, right? And a lot of them are like outside of our control, like the dollar got insanely strong during COVID. And so American development became insanely disproportionately expensive relative to the rest of the world overnight. Not your fault. Most people don't even know this. In the games industry, don't understand the macroeconomics of it all, but it had a real material impact on us. But okay, so you got headwinds, but there's still this funk that people have, and I'm sure you see it, where it's like, as an industry, like I tell people, I'm like, we got to want to survive first. Like I actually love this industry and want to make games. And so first, I think you start with, do I still want to do this? And if you do, then I think and you should. And I'm very bullish for games long term because of some of the technological things that we're talking about that solve, I think, structural problems in the games industry. Then the next thing is, okay, I want to do this. Where is technology going? Where is the customer going? And the games industry has been ignoring that for a decade. So that's an opportunity for people. The problem right now, I think, is lack of capital. But even that gets solved to a certain degree by AI and the ability to get more with smaller teams and go faster and all that. So
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, though, the capital today is catastrophic if you look at the charts starting from
yeah,
what it looked like at the ZERF period of overinvestment. It's not too different than, I don't know, 2019. Like it looks about the same levels to me. So what has fundamentally changed on the financing side? You say, I mean, I guess you could make the case, and I would probably make the case that in 2019, capital was not being deployed readily either, and it was being deployed in the wrong places, and it wasn't being deployed behind innovation because the general narrative of VCs at the time was games are hit driven and therefore it's content, and content is not a VC investment as a general rule. Like, can kind of take me through the lens of like what's happened versus those team years versus what happened through the pandemic to now, and what's the current state of financing, and what can people do about it if you're a game developer and you have a good idea and that you want to build.
well, I think that really the ones that are still relevant, because we could, this is a whole hour too on the macroeconomics of games, that probably is worth doing at some point, and probably with someone who is more of an economist than me. But one benefit of being in Web3 is I learned a lot about finance, and I learned a lot about macroeconomics and how they impact business. And actually, I think one of the um, underdeveloped skill sets that every game developer needs to, if you want to be a successful indie, you need to understand finance a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, be a little bit obsessed with money and how it works, because
And how value is created and how the KPIs in your business translate to an outcome for your investors is the bit that I've been almost a broken record on this, but I'm going to repeat it again because there's probably a bunch of people who are hearing it for the first time here. But every time we talk about funding, first of all, I get decks all the time from game developers. They're like, here's my idea, connect me to some investors or people who can help me with it. Fantastic. I would love to help. But the piece of feedback that I'm always giving is, number one, you're kind of leading with your product and you clearly have like this real joy and passion for the product. Your investor is a financial professional by and large, where they're not going to get quite as excited about the product as you are. What they will get excited about is, here's a snapshot of the market as it looks today. Here's a gap in the market that I've identified. This is a product that fits that gap. And by the way, I have the best team in the world for executing against this gap because we know how to appeal to this audience. And then fast forward to the back part of your deck where you ask for money. Great. Ask for money, by the way. Some people don't ask for money in their deck. After you ask for money, though, explain what the impact of that capital is and the way that a financial professional is now going to appreciate it. You don't have to forecast for them like what their exit valuation is, which if people expect that of you, that's kind of crazy. But what you can do is say, here's what capital does for me. It's going to get me from this point in my business to another point in my business. And here's what the KPIs matter that drive value, which could be things like, I'm going to have this many people signed up on a wish list saying they love the game and the idea.
That's right.
Buy it on Steam, like something like that, that points to traction and an actual payoff for investors.
Yeah, but you're sort of scratching at why games are hard to invest in and why Roblox is crushing it right now, which is that there's a saying that you will know that first time founders are obsessed with product, second time founders are obsessed with distribution, right? So if you look at so the when somebody comes to you with a new game idea and you're like, hey, that's a great idea, how are you going to get users? It's the first thing you ask, right? And there's a lot of things that are upstream of that, like what's going on with UA markets, what's going on with the app store, blah 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 blah, right? So if you're making a mobile app today and it's virtually impossible to break through in the app store organically, let's say it's just impossible, and there's no social mechanism driving it. And the only way to grow is to throw capital at it and doing user acquisition. So then, if you Deconstructor Fund recently said, and I believe this number, that to launch a successfully scaled mobile game, meaning you want to be like a top 100 game, top 50 game, it's going to cost, probably $750 million to get to that level. And the economics are sort of getting worse all the time because the markets get more competitive, because the big games just raise their LTV, which means they can bid more in the marketplace. And so I kind of say that, like, markets like mobile, prove the Nash equilibrium, because in game theory, you have this thing called Nash equilibrium, where basically you can play the perfect game, right? In theory. And I think that what you see is that when you have a bunch of really smart people living under one set of rules with a limited amount of capital for a long enough period of time, they will find a way to play the perfect game. And that's kind of what mobile is now. And it's not possible to break into it unless you're already playing it perfectly. And so therefore it's a bad business and nobody wants to invest in it, right? And the thing about developing for Roblox, to touch back on that, is you don't have to think about distribution as much. I'm not saying you don't have to think about it at all. You do have to think about it. How are you going to get users? But you have the platform carrying you, the way that the App Store used to carry you, the way that Facebook used to carry you, the way that Line or Kakao or WeChat carries you in Asia, right? And so part of the reason that games have become uninvestable is that you have to generate all of the distribution momentum yourself. The other area that's somewhat investable is indies on Steam, right? Why? Because what's propelling you there is Steam and the virality and the social mechanisms of Steam, not UA spend, right?
Yes.
And the problem for those who are interested in the macroeconomic side of it is that COVID happens. We print a lot of money to give people, so that all these businesses and basically to prevent a Great Depression, right? But now you've massively inflated the dollar, so the cost of everything goes up. Meanwhile, the strength of the dollar becomes much stronger during that time relative to other world currencies. So you have this so then, in order to deal with the inflation, because it comes back to us at the grocery store and people are paying, more and more and more for, everything they purchase. To combat that, we have to jack interest rates through the roof. When you jack interest rates through the roof, the cost of capital, right, completely changes. So you go from this long running regime of low interest rates, what they called ZIRC, which was zero interest rate. I forget what the C was for, but basically near zero interest rates, to now you're paying 5, 6, 7% for money, right? And what that means is that you could get the same return by not investing in a venture business and just putting your money in the bank, where it's 100% safe and there's no risk, no hit driven anything, right? So there was no incentive for investors to deploy capital. And even the VCs were not deploying capital. Even VCs that had money were not deploying capital, because their LPs, who are the people who give them the money to invest, were saying, you don't have to make those investments. It's okay, right? Because they could do a better job with their money elsewhere. They could buy Bitcoin, they could buy Ethereum, they could buy Nvidia stock, whatever it is. So all of those things have sort of crushed the venture market and the venture capital. What the venture capital got invested in during the pandemic and kind of after, most of those investments didn't work out, because they were going into these super mature markets with the bet that, we're going to bet on a Riot team, or we're going to bet on a Blizzard team, or whatever. But what you're betting on them to do is to make games like Riot and Blizzard, which is skating where the puck used to be instead of skating to where the puck is going.
And also
Right.
team misalignment too, because just hiring a team of people who built something after Riot was already in a 1,000-person company, even if they did cool shit while they're there, like the skill set of translating that to how you start from zero and build something. I think a bazillion mistakes have been made on this in game investing.
Well, the first thing that I learned going from being I've always been a more entrepreneurial guy, and I started out in startups, right? So I worked for a Mac clone maker called Power Computing, and I was one of the first 100 employees, and then we grew to 1,000. And so and then when I worked at Fraud Design, I worked exclusively with startups. So I had some middle model, some middle model for startups, right? But most people who just come up through, like, say, big gaming or whatever, they don't understand. Like, one of the first things that I realized when you become a startup founder or whatever is, number one, you have to do everything yourself, right? Everything, right? And you may have a team, you may have 3 or 4 people or 10 people or whatever it is, but whatever it is they're not doing as a CEO, it's your job, right? You have to do it because no one else is going to do it. And on top of that, you have to raise money, which is very time consuming and dealing with investors. And you have to relearn everything. You have to learn, how do you do everything cheap? Because when you work for a corporation, you know how to do things expensive. We'll hire an agency, we'll, hire a consultant, well, whatever. Those are environments where you have money. So you have to learn how to do things where you have no money, right? And once you do, you get kind of pissed off at, like, you realize that you were just wasting all this money and time and on bullshit, right? And so you have to kind of relearn and rethink all that stuff. And you can't go into gaming today with that big company, big startup, we're going to go raise too much money. Because the other problem these guys did is a lot of them got talked into some of these bigger funds with the idea that, like the A16Zs, the Lightspeeds, whatever, that, like, don't do multiple rounds of funding, do one big round of funding, take a massive check, and then that'll take you all the way to launch, right? Well, these guys will spend, they've never had to lived in an environment where anyone's ever really told them no. So they'll spend until they're out of cash and then expect someone to give them more money because they're so brilliant, right? And I said it earlier with AAA, that's how AAA works, right? The way AAA works is you spend all the money the publisher gave you, and then you go back and ask for more and basically tell them, well, if you don't, you're throwing it all away. And so they try that with the VCs and it doesn't work, right? Because they're more principled investors. So I just think there's this pivot back to more entrepreneurial. So then, okay, you're starting a new company. What do you do? The answer is you're going to have to use if you're starting anything new now, you need to be thinking about AI. And I don't give a shit what anybody tells you. Anyone who's telling you, oh, it's taking jobs and it wants to get some moral case, fuck those people. They're idiots. Don't listen to them. Just don't listen to them. They have nothing valuable to say at all, right?
So let's talk about these areas of innovation, Chris. There's 3 in our remaining 13 minutes that I think we can drill into. So I actually want to return not just to Roblox, but maybe just the overall idea of UGC and spend a little bit of time on that, because you talked about Roblox as a distribution channel. 100% agree there, but it's also capturing another energy that I think exists in the marketplace, which is just people being creators. And we see that in a whole bunch of other categories as well. YouTube captured it for video. Roblox is capturing that creative energy in the areas that it doesn't normally exist. So I want to talk about that. I want to touch on Web3 because we're both well acquainted with that category. So I'm assembling a little bit of a shit sandwich in the topics here, but Web3 has to be commented on. And by the way, I'm not saying that in a way to detract from people that are sincere and have good intentions in that market. But I think even the people who are most successful in that category would point to maybe some structural problems in pursuing that market. And then the third is AI, which you just touched on a moment ago. So let's try to ram these things through in 12 minutes, because you're right, we could take an hour for each of those. And by the way, next week at GDC, I'm talking to people who are innovators in both these categories. One, a game developer, Susan Cummings. She's going to talk about her zombies game and how she's been applying AI. And then I'm talking to the founders of Layer.ai, who are creating generative models for AI art. Highly relevant, also something a lot of people are critical to relative to what you were just saying. But I think it's an area to look at. But let's just maybe spend a
Yeah,
couple
I
more
mean,
minutes on
I think that the creator. So the thing about to know about the creator economy, and anyone who's under, let's say, 30 or under, maybe even 35, will get this, which is that, all of these kids, like my son is 22 in the games industry, right? He's working at TikTok Games, and his whole generation grew up with the creator economy on YouTube and TikTok. And if you looked at surveys during that time, and I'm sure it's probably still true, that the number one sort of aspirational career was to be a YouTuber or a TikToker or some kind of influencer, which is, has its own kind of, like the mass narcissism of our culture is kind of a problem, but the fame chasing, but they all grew up understanding that the content that they're creating on social media is what's making big tech so massively valuable, that they're actually the engine driving it. Because if you take the content away, there's nothing to do on these platforms, right? And so eventually the platforms had to pay them. Still don't pay them enough. The rev shares suck. But in some ways they're better than gaming. But what all these kids kind of grew up with the mentality of is, I can earn money on the internet, which is different from our generation, right? Our generation, Gen X, grew up with the everything is free mentality, and these two mentalities are at war with one another on the internet. There's the free internet, everything is free, and then there's the no, you got to pay for it internet. And creator and the creator culture is a part of that, where people are like, hey, I'm contributing meaningfully by making videos and stuff that people want to see. I should be able to make money off of that, right? And I shouldn't have to work a day job. I should, if I'm good enough, I should be able to make this my full-time job. So that's been happening in video for, I don't know, 20 years. And Roblox really has mainstreamed it within game. I mean, you could say that indies are kind of that, but I think it's a different energy because there's always been indies in games. But what Roblox is doing is much more like the creative model, where games are more meant to be more ephemeral. They're not necessarily meant to live forever. Some do. Everyone would love their game to live forever, but there's also a huge phenomenon of people trying to make breakthrough viral games, just like they're making great breakthrough viral videos, and they want to be compensated for that. And so I think the creator dynamics, I mean, what you're seeing, if you look at GTA 6, they just bought this content marketplace, Take-Two did, for GTA, and it's very clear that that's going to be very UGC driven. I don't even like the UGC term because I don't think it's about user generated content. It's creator content, which tends to be a more professionalized grade. It's like the spectrum, right, of like hobbyists to pros, right? But I like to call it creator and not UGC, because I think UGC is kind of an old way to think about it.
From social media more than game development. It doesn't capture everything.
Yeah. And so I think that the way a creator thinks is, I have an audience and I'm trying to serve that audience and I'm making things for them, and that's my job and I make money off of it. And also not necessarily that my aspiration is to have a huge studio, but or to take venture capital or to go public or any of these things. It's to make a nice lifestyle business where I can make, enough money that I never have to work again while making stuff for my community. Right. And it's a different aspiration. It's just everything about it is different.
Yeah, that's the indie lifestyle creative aspect. But I always come back to this idea when I've spoken about the metaverse before Zuckerberg made it a less sexy term than it originally was. But like, to me, the first metaverse was Dungeons and Dragons. It's a shared
Mhm.
creative space in which everybody gets to create. Didn't require computers, but you're building a world together. You're occupying. You're living in the world. And I feel like Dungeons and Dragons captured something really, really at the core of like what's exciting to us to be part of. And that's what a lot of the creator economy does. There can be the commercial aspect, which you're talking about for indies, but even beyond that, like just being able to create, like it's fine to be in Roblox and just make something to mess around with your friends, right? And you don't have to make it into a commercial enterprise. It doesn't even have to pay
That's
anything.
right.
There's something to capture there
That's
around
right. But
me.
once you make a little bit of money and you realize, like, hey, I like this. This isn't just a like. This isn't just an arcade machine. I put quarters into, but it can be an ATM. Once you get that idea right, it changes. It changes for some number of people what they want to do because they want to be a game developer, but there's all these barriers to getting into games, right? Or you can watch a bunch of YouTube videos and make stuff on Roblox. So I just think that, so you asked about Web3. I think Web3 wanted to be this. It wanted to be the creator economy thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I could do, 2 hours on Web3, but I think that there are a lot of structural problems with Web3. I think unless it's regular, it's beaten the libertarian anarchist out of me. I'm no longer an anarcho-capitalist because you need regulation, right? I mean, the thing is that what we saw in Web3 is just open scamming, and everyone in on the scam, all the KOL, so all the people who shape influence, with no, finally X is starting to crack down on that shit. But for the longest time it didn't. And so, and this very well, that like it was a pay to play, everything was pay to play. Anyone who and most of it was fake. There were lots of bots, lots of, the arbitrage that a bunch of people figured out is like, oh, I can get a bunch of Filipinos to tweet for, pennies on the dollar and make it look like my game is really popular, but it's not really popular. And so, it became damn nigh impossible to be a legitimate operator in that world. And everyone was pushing you towards being a scam. Even if you didn't want to be a scam, you would, people would say, well, you got to do this to be successful. You got to do that. You got to do, and you got to
You wrote
work with
about this
this.
with one of your investors who's kind of fallen into ill repute since then around just kind of pushing you towards that.
Yeah, they told me, the product is the game. Your the game is not the product. The token is the product. Just focus on the token. Why are you even? Anytime I launched anything or was talking about the game, um, they would give me shit for not focusing on the token. And my thing was like, well, it's a token for a game. So if people don't give a shit about the game, why do they care about the token? They were right in the Web3 logic, right? But ultimately, all of those games have gone to zero. And so I think that, look, I'm glad for the time I spent in the space. I believe that crypto is going to change the financial system for good and for ill, and I hope it's mostly for good. I think that it's very powerful technology, and the time that we spent there will not be wasted because you see, and Web3, I would argue, pushed like Roblox has limited edition items, right? They wouldn't be doing that if it weren't for the NFT thing, right? You see like stamp collecting and sort of this like collecting and trading meta that's happening in, Pokemon Pocket. It's happening in Monopoly Go and some of these places. That wouldn't be happening if Web3 had not been pushing. So on the idea of things like trading and collecting. So I think that there are and then there's the creator element of like I can make a game and I can make money off of it, which also was heavily, I think, championed by Web3, but sort of never lived up to potential. So a lot of that stuff, I think is going to happen, but it needs a regulated environment. It needs a fair environment. And if everything is a scam, it's like trying to open Disneyland on Skid Row. Like, it's just a bad idea,
Yeah.
right? And so you need to open Disneyland in a clean, safe place, and then it'll thrive. And then
Yeah.
AI, look, I think on the AI side, the thing that I've been thinking about lately is, they used to say, like, the big secret with live operations was you don't build a game and then bolt live operations onto it. You build a game for live operations. And if you don't have a game that's built for events to be thrown in it and for lots of dynamic things being pushed from the server all the time, and you're trying to bolt that onto a largely client-based game, you will not be able to move at the velocity that you need to move. I think, and so a lot of that is what I call the mise en place, which is a restaurant term for us fatties, that basically means everything in place. And it's when you're a professional chef, you do all your prep work, you put your knives in the right place, all that other stuff, so that when you're in high volume service, you're not, if you're chopping the onions and you're get 20 dishes out, you're gonna get buried. So I think that there's a lot of mise en place in these tech businesses, that you have to have the infrastructure to do what you're trying to do. And if you don't, and a lot of people skip that step and just want to make a game, and then they try to figure out how to do infrastructure, and it completely fails on them. With AI, I think the thing that everyone's got to start thinking about is agentic, right? And building agents. I've got a game that I'm working on with a buddy that that's an interactive storytelling game where I myself have built 30 something agents that generate the characters, the story, the branches, the choices, it figures out the monetized choices, a whole image pipeline for character consistency, images for each story beat, all this other stuff. And so in about an hour, I can generate a story, right? And that looks like a visual novel. And the way to do this, right, is what I started realizing when I was building is, like, yeah, I mean, I can prototype something, but a prototype doesn't really, without the agents, does it tell you anything? It's just like, I want to make an AI thing that looks like this. That doesn't tell you shit. What I need to do is I need to prototype the agents, and then have the agents generate the prototype, and then that shows that it actually works, right? And that's the way I would be thinking about it now, is like, if I wanted to go, the big arbitrage, right, is to go compete against somebody. Like, let's say if you wanted to go into the mobile gaming space or something, and you wanted to compete against a match 3 game, you still have to deliver a highly polished, high caliber match 3 game. But if you started with the idea that I'm going to build it all agentically, so the level design, all the PM functions, automatic A/B testing. The agents are going to create levels, they're going to create features, they're going to deploy them, they're going to test them, they're going to converge the shards, everything automated. So maybe I need one PM, maybe I need one I need one game designer, and I need an art director to set the art style. But the art director's job is to figure out how to build an agentic art pipeline to implement that style across all of this imagery. Then can I build with a team of 10 people, 20 people, 30 people? What takes a Turkish, match 3 developer 500 people to build? And the reason, and part of the thing is, like, now the Turkish match 3 developer, because a lot of those deals, if you look at it, what's not talked about a lot in games, and we're out of time, but is how government subsidies have skewed the whole market. Like in Turkey, a lot of that is a jobs program in Turkey and Cyprus, places like that. It's a jobs program. So the last thing they're going to want to do is automate and lay people off, right? But if you're starting with nothing and you're starting a game today, you can make an agentic version of that game that competes against a massive studio, and it's still got to be good. It's still got to be better than it's still got to be as good or better than what they're doing. But you could do some real damage with a small team. And so I see AI as the great equalizer, but you're going to have to start with this idea of agentic and not, I'm going to build a huge team and then we're going to go, you spread some AI on it like a condiment,
Yeah. Chris, we're gonna have to end there on a really interesting, I'd call it a cliffhanger, because next week I'm talking to a couple of people who are deep into the AI part of this. So I'll be at GDC. We're going to stream directly from the Skills Business Suite at the St. Regis. We're going to be talking to people who are really in all of this stuff right now. And it's going to be a theme that we're going to keep moving forward. Chris, you gave me ideas for like another 20 hours of live stream content, just in terms of subject. You should be a co-host on this show or something, because we could really kill it in terms of like dynamic conversations with the rest of the industry. So,
well, I'd love to come back sometime. Yeah.
We'll love to have you back. Just a closing thought for everybody. You talked a lot about agentic engineering, essentially using agents to help build and produce it, and how that's collapsed the cost, or is collapsing the cost of content creation. 100% agree. The enabler of that has been a pretty amazing deflationary spiral in the cost of intelligence. I put this out in a deck on agentic tech that's up on metavert.io that everybody can find off the top page. But that has unlocked a lot of production side, along with the models getting a lot better. So those two convergent forces, like if the models were better, but they cost 10x what they did right now, there wouldn't be as many people who would like pay $2,000 a month to Anthropic to get Claude code. But now that it's 200, you can kind of be like, that's a pretty good economics for just cranking out unlimited code during the month, or nearly unlimited code during the month. The other thing, though, is like we're not even close to the end of that deflationary spiral. We got models coming on device, which are getting close to the performance of these cloud-based models. We've got new semiconductors coming along. We're not even talking about like years away type stuff from NVIDIA, about like just within the next generation of NVIDIA chips, we're looking at another 5 to 10 improvement, 10x improvement in cost per token generation. Like, it's pretty insane how cheap the cost of intelligence is going to get. And what I think that unlocks beyond the production side, which will only get a lot cheaper, is really starting to think about AI and intelligence at the core of the game experience, like actually crafting games around intelligence. That is going to unlock this whole universe of new games.
And like you said, also distributed intelligence, right? Because if your phone, I mean, you're referring to Gwen, and the recent demo there. If your phone can run a model that's as powerful as Sonnet 4.5 or something, then I can actually move a lot of the compute off of the cloud back to the client, and I can have each individual. I can personalize the game, right, whatever it is, in a way that is just completely unthinkable today, right? Because each I mean, forget about having a bunch of PMs, running like in the sky. Like every game instance, every phone is a PM, right? So I think it's fundamentally brown. This is why I think, look, this stuff, to your point, the chip architecture, everything is getting rebuilt around AI at a technology level. So if you're a game developer and you build on technology, if what you're building is 100% based on technology, why in the fuck would you make a game built for, it's like making for buggy whips and stuff, right? It's like,
why would you code opcode by opcode in machine language to build your game today, right?
Yeah, it's just looking backward for no. I mean, why not make it a game for the Atari 2600? I mean, I like it, but it's nostalgia, right? It's make like the technology is changing so much, and I'm telling you, to those of you who are younger out there, people older than you don't know what the fuck is going on at any level. So it's wide open if you know what's going on.
English is the new programming.
No technology, no culture, and you've got a huge edge. That's what I think.
Yeah, and English is the new programming language. It compiles to a high-level language that compiles to the machine language. LLMs are the new compiler. So definitely don't fall behind, or else you're just economically unfeasible, is where we're going. Chris, we've gone way over. We're gonna have to cut it off at this point. We're gonna have you back anytime. This has been a really fun conversation. We've covered a lot of ground. I hope that for those of you who are watching, you just come away with this with a lot of inspiration and realize, hey, like, the pieces of the game industry that are not growing are the ones that are not doing the things that are either economically relevant or appealing to customers today. And it's not like the whole game industry is a monolith. Like, find the parts of the game industry that are dynamic and exciting, and there are so many of them that, like, you really have no problem if you just select for that. So I'm gonna have to end it there. Chris, thank you so much for being here. Drew, thanks for keeping the cameras online. I'm a little rusty, so I didn't give you adequate recognition earlier in the broadcast. We'll fix that at GDC. Thanks, everybody, for watching as well. Your time's valuable, and this has been a super fun conversation.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.